I've just moved my macrame across a little bit just so that it's closer to the numbers on the board and easier to see. And I've just added in my last size 8 seed bead there, and I'm almost at 6.5 inches. I'm going to be doing some square stitches without any beads now before I add the new colour, which will bring me closer to the 7 inches. I didn't in fact use all my seed beads. I was obviously knotting slightly looser today. So I've in fact used 44 of the size 8 seed beads there. So I'm going to do a few more square knots now in the same cream without any beads. And even though my leather threads are pulling apart to fit into these notches, each time I knot, I'm pulling them side by side again. So there is no gap with the leather threads. Right, I'll do one more and then I'm going to change colours and I'm going to change seed beads. In your own design, you might want to continue doing the square stitch and do the ladder stitch later, but this is just so we can show you both. So I've got a small stretch there of the square stitch and I've got my cream threads. I've cut 2 meters of my next colour. And again, the first knot is going to be the most difficult, but before we add that, you need to bring both these threads from the right and from the left inside your leather threads. So I'm just taking them inside the leather threads and right up to the top there. I'm not knotting or gluing or cutting anything at this stage. So I've got my new colour and I've just popped a little knot in it. And I'm going to take my new colour underneath everything and bring it up so that my two sides are vaguely equal. And the very first thing I'm going to do is start with a similar size stretch of square knots with the new thread, but I'm going to be trapping my old threads in my knots and in that way securing them. So I'm holding everything in place because I don't want my threads to become uneven. I form my P loop. I bring the other thread over, underneath. It's a bit fiddly, this first one. Underneath everything, and it's going to come up through that loop that I formed the P with. And you can see the threads I was using before are trapped in there. And I'm going to just slowly pull it up so that my very first knot is tightly in there. And it all looks really neat. Before I continue, I'm just going to check the lengths of my threads that they haven't come, and they have. So I'm going to loosen this a little. I need more thread on the left, so I'm just going to feed a bit more thread through and pull from the left and pull that tight again. So I've done one square knot. I'm now forming the Q with my new thread over and then under everything, the old threads and the leather, through the loop of the Q and pull tight. And we're going to do a few of these just to get us going on our new thread, and that way we are securing the old thread so it won't come undone. And you can see I'm almost at 7 inches now, which is a standard bracelet wrap, and your wrap bracelet fits snugly around your wrist. You don't want it loose. So if you're unsure of what length to go to, you could either unpin it and measure it around you, or use a piece of string before you start. Put the string around your wrist, take it off, measure it against your board, and then you know that each time you go around your wrist, you're going to go to a certain length. So, what have I done here? 1, 2, I've got to come this side. And it's getting fiddly now because I'm near the end of my board. I'm about to move everything up to the top to start with my new beads. So I'm on exactly 7 inches there. I'm going to just unhook my leather, take my pin out, move everything back up to the top, pin back in, stretch your leather cords and secure them in the notches. And I could actually cut these threads a little bit shorter now so that they're not in my way too much. I will be cutting them a lot shorter once I've done a few more stitches. So, square stitch. We're going to move on to ladder stitch now, which you can actually see it looks like the rungs of a ladder on either side of the leather there. To start this, we're going to bring both our turquoise threads now inside the leather. That's the right hand side done and the left hand side done. Just move those other ones into the center. And I'm pulling right up to the top there. Okay, and just to secure things before I start doing the ladder stitch, I'm going to cross those threads over without getting my old threads in the way. And I'm going to come back under the leather from each side again. So under the right and up to the top, and under the left and up to the top. Right, I'm close to cutting these threads now. So for 7 inches for me, with my tension, I normally use about 34 of the size 6 seed beads. I'm going to pick up my first one and I thread through from the right and get the end on the left hand side. Through from the left and start to pull. You can see that as I pull up, you've got your first little rung of your ladder there. Okay. While we're there, I'm now going to trim these off completely without cutting through my leather. Okay. And to do the next one, I have to bring both sides of my thread through to the middle of my leather. So round the outside and up through the middle. And if I pull that up, you can see I'm forming the next rung in my ladder. So pick up a size 6 seed bead, through from the right. I'm just going to trim that end there because it's a bit frayed. Through from the left, they cross over and pull gently. You're working with fairly long pieces of thread and you don't want to cause knots that aren't meant to be there. So pull up to the top And I'm ready to come around the outside and up through the middle, around the outside and up through the middle. Get your next seed bead, cross the threads over through the seed bead and pull. And now you're beginning to really see the rungs of the ladder. I'm going to continue that till I'm again at about 6.5 inches. So you can see I've changed from the cream thread to the turquoise thread without any knots down the side of my leather and glue, and it's all totally secure and neat. So I'll come back to you when I'm near the end. Before I add my last size 6 seed bead, I just want to show you when we were doing the square stitch, the stitching is all over the central part of the leather with the beads on the outside. And doing the ladder stitch, we've got the beads inside the leather with the stitching on the outside of the leather. So there's the size 6. I've got to bring my threads around and underneath through the center of the leather. And here's my last size 6, which I'm adding because you can see that I'm nearly at 7 inches, or I'm on the 6.5 inch mark. Pop that through, pull all the way through, and you get really nice even spacing down the sides between your stitches. So my last size 6 seed bead is in and I'm ready to start finishing off. But I'm going to bring my threads through to the middle once more. And this is a good way of pulling it all together and getting it to taper to the end. And I'm going to cross my threads over in the middle there. And I'm going to finish with some square stitch. So I've formed a P, thread over under the leather and through the loop of the P. Just want to pull this all tight up at the top there as well. Form a Q, thread over under the leather through the loop of the Q. Pull tight. You can see how it's pulling the leather in there to a little V. It's just pulling it to the end. Do a couple more of the square stitches. And then I'll be ready to add my button. We'll just do one more either side. So for the last time, form a P, cross your thread over, pop it under the core leather and bring it up through the loop of your P. Form a Q, bring the thread over, and then, I'm not holding it very well, under the leather cords and up through the loop of the Q. Pull it nice and tight. Right, we're going to add, well we're going to finish off now so that we've got a little loop that our button will fit through. So you can take everything off your board and we're going to tie all these knots together, or all these threads together I should say, in a knot right up at the top near your bead, last bead. Might take a little bit of jiggling to get it right up there and to get the S-lon bead cord threads tight especially. So I'm just using my fingers to push the knot into place and then pull these threads tight. Get my fingers out the way in a second. So I've pulled those tight, and this is now probably the only place where I'm going to use some glue, some hypo cement, just to secure that knot. I won't be tying the bead cords anymore. I need to now just measure the width of my button so that I make sure that my next knot to form that loop is going to take the button. It's going to be there. I'm just tying the leather, the two leather ends now. Before I tighten it, I just make sure I don't want it too big. It's going to come through there. If you were making the bracelet for somebody else or you didn't know the width of the person's wrist, you could then form another loop on this end, and then it's like a little extender chain. They could either button it through that loop or through this loop here. So take your hypo cement and you're just going to pop some glue on those threads. And you can do the same on this final knot here. Let it dry. Let it dry for a while because you don't want to cut the threads too soon and have everything unravel. And then when you snip your threads, I'd snip off about there so that you've still got something to pull if the knot becomes a little loose, and snip your S-lon bead cord threads as close to the end. There we go. Snip those off there. And all that's left for you to decide is whether you're a bit of a beach bum like me or an English rose. And if you have any questions on making the longer one, the 5 wrap, please just leave your questions in the comments below and we'll answer them as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching. Bye.